or listening back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
And welcome to Points of View on Teachers Talk Radio. Happy Sunday. Today we have myself, Ray, we've got Brent, Carl, and Lucy, and we are discussing some issues that have been in the media, being discussed, argued, shouted about recently to do with education. So as promised recently, the last time we had lots of people, I have the conch, which is pronounced conch, so I'm going to start. Today we are discussing, to begin with, the toilet saga, the never-ending toilet saga. There was a post on a Facebook group, which is not Mum's Net, but it's something that sounds strangely similar. I wonder who's ripping off who. And the actual article was from October, but there are recent comments. And it's to me, it seems like the same thing over and over again. My school is ignoring my children's human rights by not letting them go to the toilet. The school is locking the doors during lesson time. Children aren't being allowed to go, etc. But interestingly, the article itself that was linked back from October is suggesting the obvious solution, which is toilet passes for students who actually need them. And everyone else just needs to kind of deal with it because that's part of life. We don't just get to drop trow and wee whenever we need to, wherever we are. So all of this has sparked, reignited, I suppose, a debate that never seems to go away because the problems keep increasing and schools keep trying to deal with them in various ways. And parents, a number of parents, a number of people are forever annoyed by the fact that students can't just up and leave and gather in toilets and bully each other and vape and vandalize and just generally be unsupervised and unsafe. Whatever they want to, that seems to be a problem. Now, it is worth noting, I'm a secondary teacher. I think 3 out of 4 of us are secondary teachers. So we're coming at this from a very much a secondary point of view. What a 5-year-old is capable of doing and how long they can hold it in is very different from a 15-year-old. Hopefully no 5-year-olds are vaping in toilets. Hopefully no 15-year-olds are vaping in toilets, but realistically, one of those groups is doing it more than the other. So the actual setting matters, I think, here. So our perspectives on this are going to be largely determined, I think, by our own experiences in those settings. But we've all got our different views on it. So who would like to metaphorically take the conch and start?
I can't because I've only just fixed my sound. So there was an issue. So somebody else, please.
Okay, Brent, here you go.
Right. Look, 22 years in secondary. I have never once walked out of a class and said, kids, can I go to the toilet, please? Now, I haven't. Now, of course, I'm a man. I'm a very healthy man. And I'm an athlete. I still play multiple sports. I'll be playing football later on. So I do reasonably hydrate. I drink more tea than probably China and India put together, being an Irishman. I regulate myself. I discipline myself. I go during break times, go during lunch times. I go sometimes that little gap between lessons, and I control my functionals as I was taught at school. Now, when I was at school, we were very much, it was going to the toilet was like a hard thing to get asked. I remember my French teacher, Mrs. McGahey, had it for 5 years, an Irish woman teaching French, which is a novelty. And you never asked to go to the toilet because you never got. And I remember once actually in 5th year, I plucked up the courage to ask to go to the toilet. And the pourriez aux toilettes, s'il vous plaît, madame. No! I was like, c'est desperate. And then she turned around and she went, c'est desperate? And I went, yes. Oui, oui, madame. Oui, oui. And that got a laugh. And I got to go to the toilet. And are you ready for that? You ready? I didn't even need the toilet. I was bored. I just wanted to go for a walk. And the majority of times I needed the toilet as a kid, I was bored. I didn't like the lesson. I went for a walk. So those parents out there who think that their child needs the toilet, I'm sorry, they're bored. They've got the attention span of a gnat now because their dopamine hits are going with da, 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 da. When they're gaming. I'll ask any parent who's got a child who games, do they turn around and do they sometimes forget to go to the toilet when they're gaming for 7 or 8 hours, or forget to eat when they're 7 or 8 hours? It's funny how their needs aren't met when they're sitting in the world that they want to live in, aka their bedroom, and they don't come out of that bedroom for 7 or 8 hours, and they can't, when they come to school, go 20 minutes without drinking 16 liters of water and going to the toilet 55 times. So with all due respect, children's physiology has not changed since I was at school. What has changed is the demand culture. And I say demand culture because there's different needs and wants. Now, the child has needs, the child has medical needs. I will always let a child with medical needs go to the toilet. That is genuine, and that is social contract. The problem I have is that those kids who are, for want of a better word, taking the, insert the word for going to the toilet in there, they ruin it for the rest. And that's just the same with everything else. There are genuine children who need to go to the toilet, but the problem is they ruin it for everybody else because those who are going to the toilet are vandalizing toilets, vaping, and they're up to no good. And that's the problem in secondary school. We can't say to your parents, I'm a parent myself, I'm a teacher. When I give that child permission to leave my care, I'm taking a risk. With all due respect to any parent listening, I ain't taking a risk with your children. I am not taking any risks with your children because as a parent myself, I don't want teachers to take risks with my own children. And when I let that child leave my care, I'm taking a risk that I'm trusting that child's intentions are noble and good. And let's be clear, children lie. And any parent that says my child doesn't lie is living in cuckoo land because they all lie. That's just the nature of children. And any parent that says I've taught my child not to lie, I've taught my children not to lie, doesn't stop them trying. That's the nature of the game. So we have to be real. We're in the coalface of what is real world, not the ideal world of my child's rights and get on your high horse and go on social network, get into an echo chamber and start bashing teachers because we are draconian people living in the 15th century, not letting their child go to the toilet. That's not fair because the reality on the ground is very different to the reality at home. And there's that massive disconnection between those people who have the demand culture, where they think a school is now someone running a coffee shop or some sort of barista service, rather than an actual organic organization where you've got 30 children in there. Because here comes the other rub. Sir, can I go to the toilet? Yeah, off you go. But you let him go. You let him go. You let him go. You might as well just say, forget lessons today. You just all go to the toilet and we'll just hang out at the toilets for another half an hour, shall we? And discuss last night's social WhatsApp group that we are not old enough to have anyway. But anyway, we are. So that's my take on it. I think it's just another example of the way the culture has gone and how we are being not supported as teachers and how we are seen as the bad guys because we're daring to say that word that nobody wants to say these days. That word that people have forgotten. No. No, you can't go to the toilet because you don't need to go to the toilet. And if you did need to go to the toilet, there's plenty of opportunities during the school day for you to go to the toilet. And that's what you should have done. That's what we're there to teach the children. Are we not there to teach them? Like I was taught to regulate my bodily functions. And believe you me, as a person of neurodiversity coming into my understanding of my own issues, even I, with undiagnosed neurodiversity back in the day, was able to regulate because I knew there were systems in place which basically rigidly said, there's when you go to the toilet, there's when you do not go to the toilet.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if I was to play devil's advocate on this, because I don't disagree with you, but if we're going to look at a different angle on this, the school I was in, the complaint was that there weren't enough toilets. It was a large school. I think we had, including sixth form, 1,400 students, something around that. I don't know how many toilets, but there weren't many. In fairness, there weren't many. There weren't many for the staff. It was an old school built in the 40s and, you know, sort of not built for the number of students that there were. So very often we had the complication where I couldn't go, couldn't go. And also you do have children who don't like to go to school, to the toilets in the breaks because they're scared of the other kids that are in there. obviously my concern is that we know that you can have as many phone bans in school as you like, but we know that kids are still getting around that somehow, messaging each other to tell people that somebody they want to have a word with is on their way down to, they've just left the lesson to the toilet, that kind of thing. So there is a safeguarding issue with children wandering around the school unsupervised, and we don't have enough staff to supervise them. That's the problem. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, but there are just a couple of things that I guess you could put in with children who don't use toilets at all for the entire day when they're at school, because they are so scared of the vulnerability of being locked in a cubicle and coming out and not knowing who's out the other side waiting for them. And so, you know, that is a very real issue as well. So you've got those two extremes, the ones that want to go to the toilet all the time, and the ones who are literally not eating, not drinking, causing themselves all kinds of, you know, physical problems as a result, because they're too scared. So a multitude of issues around this.
No, I understand. My school's similar. Sorry, Carl. My school's
No,
similar.
no,
We had some sixth formers who were displeased about the about various things around toilets, and they went and found the guidance for. There's no legislation about how many toilet cubicles have to be in a school building, but there's guidance around what there should be ideally, and we are way under it. There are not enough cubicles for the number of people in the building at all, nowhere near. No. So it's a problem, and especially when you have short break times, because break times and lunch times in schools seem to be getting shorter and shorter and shorter. There's often not enough time, which then creates, as you said, Lucy, these students that just refuse to go, but it also creates the problem of needing to go in lessons, which I understand. And I pee a lot. And it's mostly to do with anxiety. Like, I can't think on a full bladder. I can't teach on a full bladder. It stresses me out. So I am forever in between lessons, like letting them out 30 seconds early, getting them out of the room, running to the toilet, doing what I need to do, coming back, letting my class in like a minute later than I probably would want to or should. And it creates a whole bunch of stress and faff, but it's because I have to and it's not because I haven't been trained to, you know, we used to go on 8-hour drives across various parts of Ontario on a regular basis. I'm well acquainted with holding my bladder, because my parents were not stopping the car for me. I know how to do that. It's more like if I have to do something or think about something or feel relaxed and regulated and calm before chaos hits, like I cannot have to pee. I have to go. So because I'm like that, I'm very sympathetic to various issues and various concerns and various emotions and feelings around using the toilet and around personal hygiene and around bladder issues and around all of that. So I do let students go, probably more than definitely more than I'm supposed to, and probably more than I should. But my thing is, like, as soon as you start, like, if I say no, I have to explain this first, or just wait 10 minutes and ask me in 10 minutes if you still need to go. As soon as I start, like, if I say that and then like, oh, bet, I'm like, right, no one's going anymore. Because I tend to be so generous with things, because I understand. As soon as they push back and give me an sore attitude, I'm like, bro, it. So most of the time they're pretty good about not doing that. But then obviously there's the ones that have the toilet passes. And then you get why can she go? I'm like, mind your business. It's because she can, and you can't. Sit down, be quiet, do your work. So it's not, I don't think it can ever be as black and white as parents certainly seem to think it is. Because, I mean, if they want to personally fund 6 different members of staff so we can have toilet supervised every second of the day, not just a break and lunch like they always are, so that we can allow people in there without any safeguarding concerns. If parents want to pay for that, great, I'm up for it. But otherwise, we don't have the staffing, we don't have the resources, we don't have anyone who can make sure that these kids are safe and not getting up to things and not being bullied and not vandalizing things, etc., etc. So it's not safe to have a bunch of them out of lessons at one time. I don't understand why that's such a not obvious thing for people. But also I feel like I have experienced a school that was really, really rigid about not letting anyone go to the toilet. And I just feel like there has to be some kind of, I've been a teenage girl. Luckily, I never was in a position where I, had any leaking issues publicly, but I've seen it. I know what it's like to be 12 and to be struggling those kind of bodily functions for the first time and not feeling so uncomfortable and so awkward. And so it's not a fun place. And if we are trying to do what's best for these students and guide them through that process and help them and make them feel safe, then we need to make some allowances for students in certain situations that maybe don't have a toilet pass.
I mean, I think if I may, that speaking as a male of the species, sometimes male teachers will feel a little insecure when certainly secondary age girls are asking, because they know that the accusation can be leveled against them that they are, experiencing menstrual problems, and that the male teacher is exacerbating that and doesn't understand. And most male teachers, if they teach in secondary for long enough, will have to confront that particular dilemma. So there is an issue there, I think, which is sometimes factored in. But I mean, I think there's a reason why we toilet train young people, or at least most parents do. Insofar as obviously the whole purpose is you couldn't function in life if you were, unable to control, at least to a reasonable degree, your bodily functions. You actually couldn't function. You would become pretty much housebound if you were in that situation. There are occasionally people with medical problems, and the particular group chat that prompted this discussion led with a story about a young person who it turned out had IBS, and there are some medical exceptions to that. They're rare. They are much rarer than anecdote would suggest. So consequently, most of the time they're used disingenuously. I think for schools, though, it isn't about denying children basic needs. It's about balancing learning, safeguarding and fairness. Because the overwhelming majority of young people manage perfectly well within sensible systems that are set for them. For me, it's more, this debate is yet another manifestation of a much deeper problem, which is, do we trust teachers as professionals to exercise their discretion and use their judgment, because they are the parent? In law, the teacher or the adult that's in care of that young person at that point is in loco parentis, which is pretty obviously the legal way of saying they are the parent. And at that point, they have to be able to exercise their judgment about what is reasonable and what is not, in the same way that a parent has to exercise their judgment. Now, these things are by their very nature subjective. Judgment is, by its very nature, something that has to be weighed up, balanced, and consider lots of different factors. So the moment that these things are taken out of context and then debated in these groups, it simply becomes another example of how people who have a problem with teachers and schools having authority want to exercise that problem through the proxy, in this particular case, of visiting the toilet. So I think it's really about a much deeper issue. And as you know, I think was said earlier, the biology of this has not changed. The needs in a physical sense of young people have not changed in the last 20, 30, or in fact, 20,000 years. What's changed are people's expectations. And I sense from all of us and from most people in education a degree of frustration about what might be called extreme permissive parenting, in the sense that a parent is so responsive that they're almost providing a sort of 24-hour concierge service for their child. That is not good parenting, and it's not good teaching either. It's not a demand-led business. Managing young people is about considering when to set boundaries, about how to support them, about how to teach them right from wrong, And that means a great deal more than simply allowing them to do what they want when they want.
Carl, I think that's brilliant, and I think that's exactly right. And the point about being in loco parentis, as it is, I think people don't realise what a responsibility that is, because when you're a parent, you have maybe, I've got 3 children, you know, I'd have 3 of them at home I was managing. When you're in the classroom in that role, you can have 30, 32, 34 young people in that classroom who all have a range of differing needs, and you're trying to manage all of those. Some of the comments we've been seeing on the screen have been really interesting as well, about that split second decision making. You know, why would you want to go? And look, people will say this is really unfair because you don't let my kid go ever to the toilet, but apparently other children are allowed to go. And we do know the people, the children who are more likely to be going to the toilet because they want to do something else other than go to the toilet, because they've seen a friend go past, because they want to go and vape, or just because they want some time out of the lesson because they're bored. So we're making those judgments all the time. And I just think, I mean, you know, we've had it time and time again where that walk a 1,000 miles in my shoes, or whatever it is, you know, if people taught, if everybody had a week working in education, every parent, they'd probably have a different view of things. And they did, to be fair, have some idea of what education was like when we had COVID, and parents had to supervise their children, sometimes teach their children depending on their age and stage. And people all said, oh God, I could never be a teacher. But that seems to be moving on again, and we seem to be forgetting it. And actually that's only the teaching part of it. You know, you're managing your own children, which for me would have been, I mean, I'm glad my children were older during COVID, because I didn't have to do anything. I said, it's up to you. If you don't want to go, the school will deal with it and I will back them up. And so my daughter did, and the other 2 had finished, so it was fine. But you know, for people who are having to teach their own children, I'm sure it was really challenging and brought a different challenge than we have in as the appointed teacher, and not the person who's also making them go to bed and telling them off, speaking to granny rudely and all of those things. Do you get what I mean? So I know that it's a very different thing, but I think that people just don't realise, see teachers as the enemy sometimes, and we're not. We're just trying to get an education into young people. I just want to take a second, because I wanted to talk to you about Hachette Learning, because this show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. So level up your professional development today and visit www.hachetteLearning.com to explore the full range of titles. Also, there's Teachers Talk Connect. So Teachers Talk Connect is back. Our annual CPD and networking extravaganza. Join the TTR team on Saturday, the 14th of March in Manchester. Tickets are free, so what are you waiting for? Head over to ttradio.org/connect 2026. And then just lastly, AQA, because AQA know that teachers are the real experts in the classroom. That's why they work closely with teachers like you, combining your insight with their assessment expertise to create resources, tools, training and guidance that genuinely make a difference. They're the UK's most chosen assessment organisation, so chances are you already know their work. AQA are focused on helping teachers feel supported and ready. If you want to find out more about how they're working with teachers like you, just head to their website to find out more.
So thank you. I mean, I think, you know, if I may, I think there is a bigger issue that we've all been touching on here, which is parenting, and the question of what parents are responsible for and what schools are responsible for. And it does seem to me that there seems to be quite a friction at the moment between the two. And it's not just reflected in the relationship between schools and parents. I think it's also reflected in the relationship between the police and people in society, and doctors and nurses and medical professionals and patients. There is an issue that we have with where authority stops and starts. And I think it's a real problem, and no doubt it's got deeper origins than, you know, we're in a position to be able to explore today. But I think that we're having to grapple with it in schools all the time.
I think that culture of deferred responsibility we live in a 24/7 society where you get what you want. You can order what you want. You can go in and get fast food what you want. Why isn't the teacher giving me what I want? And that's the parent as well as the child. Why am I not getting what I want? We're customer services. I get what I want everywhere else. We've created such a demand culture and a culture of instant gratification. I say to a child, you really need the toilet. Okay, I'll let you go a minute or two before the end of the lesson. And then guess what? They never bother asking me.
Yeah.
And it's about relationships. I push back because I'm an established teacher. And I can tell the students, we're human lie detectors. I can tell the students who are genuine. They very rarely ask. Their behavior is exceptional. I can trust them. And that's a horrible thing to say to some parents. I can trust some children to go to the toilet because the behavior is good. Because I would, as a person who's in lotus parentis, say that they have discipline, they have respect. They wouldn't abuse my trust. And there are others that do. And that goes for parents as well. It goes for society. Look at the current situation with the royal family. Look at their previous leadership of the country. There are people in positions of authority that need to be questioned. Absolutely. When I was at school, there were teachers that we probably should have held more accountable. Church should have been held more accountable. So holding authority to account is a good thing. But there are those of us who are a good authority, who are benevolent authority. We're not, denying their child their fundamental rights. And there's a lot of this of my rights, but they forget their responsibilities. And with rights come responsibilities. And that community idea of, I get what I want, I don't care about the rest. And you have that attitude pervading throughout society. I don't care the consequences for everybody else. As long as I get what I want, as long as I'm satisfied, who cares about everybody else? And schools don't work like that. Schools work on a collective basis of the impact of allowing one child to go to the toilet would have a cascading effect is never considered because it's all the layers are focused on my demands, what I want, what I get. And if you deny this person, the first response is, same as the children, it's personal. Why are you denying me? And that's why we need support with an institution to say, no, this is a policy of the school. I'm not denying your child. This is our policy because here is the reasons for it. The problem we have is leadership is pandering far too often to this, to the people who shout the loudest, the most aggressive, and threaten the most. And as a result of that, that weak leadership gets exploited. And I would go so far as to say the same goes for students. If they know a member of staff is going to say yes, they're going to ask that member of staff. So in schools, we're only as strong as the strongest link, because if there's a culture that gets in and that culture starts happening and the kids go, well, sir lets me go. Why don't you let me go? Well, great for him. But over my dead body are you walking out of my class? I couldn't care with the Pope in Rome in a Catholic school. I teach in a Catholic school. Who told you permission to go to the toilet? You ain't leaving my lesson. Simple as. My classroom, you are not leaving. But I've got the confidence and experience to say no, and know that the child will not push back because they'll go, oh yeah, I tried it and I failed it. But I make that judgment in a matter of a millisecond, weighing up that child, weighing up the age, weighing up their gender, weighing up all of those factors and going, what is the probability that I'm going to get into trouble if I say no, or equally, B, I'm going to get into trouble if I say yes. Because there's that is a fraught decision. I say yes to this child, that child goes and does something silly. Somebody says, why'd you let him go out of the toilet? I say no, and I get a parent on the phone saying, you've denied my child their fundamental rights, and there you are, local newspaper child. It's a risk. It's becoming a risk decision either way. Not making a decision is a risk. Making a decision is a risk. And I don't think sometimes we get supported. I want to effectively say we're thrown under the bus on this one.
We are. I'm so tired of having to, in my instantaneous micro decision making process, when you've got 32 kids and 100,000 things to consider, also having to consider, is this going to make a social media post? Is my response to this question going to be picked up by the Sun? Like, why am I having to think these things? Why is this a thing that happens? Like, it's ridiculous.
And that's changed really in recent years as well, because I left working in education in 2022, and I don't remember ever thinking, gosh, this could go viral, this could become a newspaper story. So this is really recent. It goes to show how fast society is moving at the moment, and how quickly an ordinary event in a classroom, just an ordinary no, you're not going to the toilet, you ask every lesson, and every lesson you're gone for 10 minutes, that's what, like that's suddenly in the paper and being discussed on shows like this as well, and you're the source of that story. So who wants to be that person? So actually the risks in teaching are getting much greater, whereas it used to be something that you did, and only the people in the school itself knew who you were. You might have a reputation for being the teacher who always lets them go, or the teacher who never lets them go. But now that can be turned into that can be turned into a newspaper story, and everybody knows, everyone knows that teacher, God, never lets children go to the toilet during a lesson. How evil. Now look, we don't have a primary school teacher on here, but I worked for 2 years, 2004 to 2006 in primary education, and one of the things that I remember hearing all the way through, so I did year 3 the first year, and I did year 6 the next year, and even from year 3 they were starting that training. You're out of infant school now, you can wait till break time, you can wait till playtime, as it were. By the time you got to year 6, they were saying you will not be able to go to the toilet just when you want to. In secondary school, you won't just be able to ask, because when you're in a lesson you can't go. So I'm going to start adopting that as well, because you've got to learn this in preparation for secondary school. I don't know whether that's still the case, because in 2006 when I left, things were very different in terms of behavior, boundaries, discipline, etc. And we've turned a corner, and I don't know whether primary schools that's still a thing, or whether it's coming through from primary schools and that sort of teaching isn't there. But and I'd understand why it wasn't, because it's a minefield now. It's an absolute minefield, working out who is allowed, who isn't allowed, why are you trying to get out. So I can understand with younger children, people sort of feel as though they've got to give more leeway. But when you've got kids of 15 and 16 saying they can't hang on, it's ludicrous, unless you have a medical condition. And we had a little card system so that they could show a card. I don't know whether that's still a thing, because I guess now they would say it's unfair for them to be branded, so you've just got to know who in your class has got. I have no idea, but these are the sort of everyday problems that teachers are facing, and it adds to the complication, as if it isn't hard enough to be planning the lessons, delivering the lessons, helping children with things from send just through to not understanding a subject, marking, everything else. You've now got to become a sort of a judge of an arbitrator of what you can and can't do. It's crazy.
Before I get complaints, I do let children go to the toilet with their medical pass, and I don't humiliate them.
No,
I know the children who have the medical pass, and they will subtly indicate to me. They don't even ask. They'll sometimes nod at me, and they'll write on their diary, because I've got a diary, can I go to the toilet? So I don't even make them in front of the rest of the children. That's complete management, because I'm not having that child having that discussion where it opens it up into a debate. That child, and that creates a culture. And that culture then means that child feels safe. So if any people out there are going to start generating, oh, he's the bad guy. No, I let children who are genuinely needing the toilet go to the toilet, because I make a judgment call as a professional. I don't second guess my dentist. I don't second guess my doctor. I'm a trained professional. I know when children are telling the truth to a certain extent. I make a judgment call, and that judgment call the majority of the time is right. And Carl made a really good point earlier on about girls, for instance. It's, a certain age, you get 13, 14, you start to get complications there. But even that can sometimes be a girl who can give you that look, and you can make that judgment on the face, and they go, sir, I really need the toilet. And you just think, you know what, I'm not taking the risk on that. And they very rarely ask, and they've got that look on their face. And again, a subtle, and that's absolutely fine. And then I'll check with the TA. But then we've had a situation where we had girls who were, let's just say their bodily functions were every week rather than monthly. And we were discovering that, and our behavior team discovered that with some students, that they were playing that card, and they were particularly targeting male teachers because they thought, so
that happens.
Yeah, at those. And we then said, write in diary. So now when a child wants to go to the toilet, and we do allow under conditions that we radio a behavior team person that this person's gone to the toilet, and the kids know that. What happened to the number of children asking to go to the toilet? When we put a system in place to monitor, and a system in place of accountability, so that the kids were monitored how many times they went to the toilet, lo and behold, what happened? The number of toilet visits declined. Oh, as if their bladders responded to that new system, of course, as opposed to their behavior. And it is about managing behavior, and it comes back to relationships. If the student has a good relationship with the teacher, that student, and it can be trusted, the teacher can trust the student, then yes, I would let students go to the toilet under those conditions, because I know that's out of character and I know it's genuine. But when they rock in after lunch, and 5 minutes after lunch, and after they've had 45 minutes of opportunity to go to the toilet, and they're supping on 16 litres of water because they've been playing football, and they go, "So I really need the toilet," and I went, "I'm really sorry about that, but you had 45 minutes to go to the toilet, but I really need the toilet." And I'm like, "I'm really sorry, you had 45 minutes and you chose to spend that running around the football pitch.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry for you, but no."
Make better choices. Yeah, Kim has just said, along with knowing who's SND, PP, SEMH, who I can cold call, who I can't, who needs checking in each lesson, etc., I also have to know who has a card to go to the toilet. This is way too much for a teacher to hold in their minds 5 lessons a day. And again, this is highlighting the difference between primary and secondary really, really, really well. If you teach 1,000 students, you're not going to know that. And if you're in the middle of something and you're spinning 16 plates in a lesson and some kid asks, "Can I go to the toilet?" it's so much easier to default to either yes or no. You know, if you don't allow yourself to make those micro decisions and you just have a black or white approach, like sometimes it has to be one of those. Like we just can't do everything all at one time. It's ridiculous. But to go back to something that was just said, I worked in a girls' school for 11 years, and I was a head of year in that school for 6 of them. And it was interesting, the amount of conversations I had to have with girls in my year group about you had to go sort yourself out because it's your time of the month in history and you were gone for 15 minutes. Okay. So last week in science, you also had to go sort yourself out because it was your time of the month. Do I need to get your mum in so we can talk to a doctor? Because this isn't really healthy for you. The amount of times I had to have those conversations, and eventually they just admitted, "Oh yeah, I was taking the mic because Mr. Smith isn't going to question it, or Mr. Brown doesn't want to ask any questions." And they're really quite honest. They were quite honest, a lot of them. They were just absolutely pushing it because they knew male staff got awkward and uncomfortable and felt particularly vulnerable because a male teacher in a girls' school, I'm sure, is acutely aware of every possible thing that can go wrong in that situation. And they know that. And kids are kids, and 13-year-olds are 13-year-olds, and they're going to take advantage sometimes. So I had to do a whole assembly about, like, you had to hold, literally, as a head of year, I had to stand in front of a bunch of year 8 students and say, when you were young, you learned to manage your bladder and when to drink and when not to drink and gauge when the toilet was. Now you're getting to the age when you have to learn how to manage your menstrual cycle. And I had a whole PowerPoint about different methods. Like, it was a whole thing that I had to do. And I was like, and we're going to work on this. The excuses are done. There's no more of this. It's not going to happen anymore. And it drastically reduced the number of girls that were absolutely taking advantage of the situation. Sorry, Lucy.
No, it's only a quick one. But when I was at school, when we had PE, if you had your period, you didn't have to have a shower after PE. Now, nobody wanted to have a shower and a communal shower. It was horrible. So they used to write in the register, they used to put a red circle around your mark, your slash in the register, if you had your period, so that you could only once a month say you couldn't have a shower because you had your period. They kept a record of it back in those days. I mean, you couldn't do that. It's phenomenal, isn't it? Absolutely phenomenal. But you know, so we do have to have some leeway, and we do have to know that for some, you know, young girls, managing these things is difficult, particularly when that it's very new. It's a very new situation. But without being too indecent, you want to try being a teacher with endometriosis or something like that, where you have to carry on teaching, and it's the most horrendous thing, and you can't just go off. You can't just go off because you need to go and sort yourself out. So at the end of the day,
this brings us here. This brings us to Claire's comment, who's clearly not been watching since the beginning. I'm sorry, but how dare you not let a child go to the toilet? This is very similar to a lot of the net mums net, mummy, net comments that have been going around. In the real working world, you would never stop an adult.
Okay, I mean, if we take that point, and I mean, Claire, I understand what you're getting at. But in the world of managing young people, and they are different, they aren't adults. If they were adults, they wouldn't be in school, not in that way. When you're managing a class of 30 young people, what you have to do, Claire, is make judgments all the time, like a parent would make all the time, about what is genuine and what is going to help the class, and when somebody is not genuine and it isn't necessary for them to do that. And these are judgments that have to be made. And we trust teachers because they have been trained and they're qualified, and we trust them in our society to be loco parentis, or in other words, to make all manner of decisions about what's appropriate at that moment for that young person in the context of the other young people and that class. So we have to give that trust to those teachers. And I think you can't say, well, it's the same as in an adult workplace, because you wouldn't get the same situation in an adult workplace. The situation is going to be different. And what I would like to do is also pick up on a point that was made earlier when we were talking about leaders who then feel that they have to accede to parents' demands. And part of the problem with that is that that has sometimes been made the case, enabled, because of Ofsted and the culture, the complaint culture that's been allowed to develop unchecked by politicians who are keen to get public support. And what it means is that then parents are in a position where they are empowered to complain and make it very difficult for school leaders to actually do their job effectively. And if you complain to Ofsted retain that complaint, regardless of whether there's any evidence to support it or not. They still retain it, and it is used then when an inspection happens next time. And that to me seems to be a fundamental problem, because that is an open door, and I think it's been well discussed that that's a problem. But it puts school leaders in an impossible position, because it means that effectively anybody can complain about them at any time, and Ofsted will potentially take that seriously, even if they say that they would dismiss 95% of those claims. The leader doesn't know that, and they still have to account for themselves. They have to explain themselves, no matter how unreasonable the complaint that's leveled against them might be. So what many leaders do is they become risk averse, and then they don't support their staff. Now that's a fundamental error. Any leader that doesn't support their staff is not a leader that you want to work with, because it means that fundamentally you're on your own, and no teacher can do their job if they're on their own. So weak leadership there's a reason for it, and it does create a problem, and it's enabled that problem to then grow. And it's the teacher in the classroom who's then the person that's having to negotiate those shark infested waters. And it is extremely difficult. And we must stop that. And we must grow up as a society and recognize that trust has to become part of being a teacher. And we trust that individual to make judgments. And we're not going to, or shouldn't have to, continually question those judgments unless there is overwhelming evidence of a serious and deliberate malpractice.
Do you know another thing, just very quickly? In the adult world, people will stop you from going to the toilet. If you work in a call centre, then they time how long people are in the toilet for, and they will pay for people who have gone too long. Cigarette breaks, all of those things, they're not allowed to have them. You can't have them if you're a coach driver and you're driving a coach load of people from one city to another. You don't get to stop every few minutes and go, oh sorry. Do you get what I mean? Like, in the adult world, we do manage these things properly. We don't just drop every time we need to go. I do, as a counsellor, I can sit for 2 hours easily in a meeting with no break, and you're sort of thinking, oh please, can we have a break in a minute? Can we have a break? And they go, to be honest, we've only got one more item on the agenda, so we're just going to carry on through, and you see everyone go, oh, good grief, you know. But you know, it's really important. We are training young people to function in the adult world, and part of that is about reminding them or keeping that understanding that you can't just drop everything because you need to go to the toilet. You do have to learn to wait, and actually you'll have more problems if you don't train your bladder when you're an adult anyway, because you know, if you never allow your bladder to become particularly full and go every time you need to, you've got no techniques. You know, certainly for young women, you become pregnant, you'll end up having problems. So, you know, it does no harm to train your bladder. We're not all getting up at every hour in the night, are we?
Do you know what thing upsets me the most about that comment is, where the flipping hell are these parents when the funding was cut with schools? Where were they when it comes to general elections? Where they're very good at criticizing schools, but they're very not good at helping us out. They're very good at undermining us. Why don't they go direct to the source of the issue? Same as, like, for instance, if there's a situation where fining parents, it's us teachers who are fining parents. We're not fining parents. We're trying to work around parents. We're trying to sometimes undo their lack of due diligence. I potty trained my child at 2.5 years old. I told them, please and thank you. I'm watching now children sitting at a dinner table who are 14, 15 years old, not using a knife and fork and trying to get two chips together to put beans together. Now, I'm a working class kid. I grew up in a working class environment. My parents taught me please and thank you, manners, respect, all of those things. I'm really sorry. I'm not going to start parent bashing. Well, actually, I am, because the standards, it's about pride. It's about standards. It's got to be about that. And we are trying to create in children people who can function in the real world. And as Lucy's saying, if you think in the real world out there, there's a problem why we have needs at the moment with our children, because we need to be a little tougher on them. And that doesn't mean nastier. I am sometimes tough on the children because I care about them, because I'm tough on my own children because I care about them and I love them. It doesn't mean I hate them. Learn to say no. Learn to turn around and say, actually, I'm doing this child a favor by teaching them that they need sometimes boundaries. They need to know that they just don't get what they want, and using emotional guilt, using shame, or threatening you, or trying to undermine you will not work, because that will not get you far in the world of work either. And when artificial intelligence come along, I'm going to be honest with you, you want your children to basically go to the toilet every 5 minutes and be distracted every 5 minutes and be pandered to, then fine. You just watch what will happen to their employment prospects in the future, because everything now is metrically weighed up. Their mobile phone will track them. There are parents who track their children on mobile phones and saying, let them go to the toilet all the time. Well, that technology can be used in the workplace now. There were warehouses where they track how fast and how many things you pick. That's coming in. We are literally living in a world now where there is no hiding place. Your efficiency is doctored and monitored. So if they are, when they go, for instance, for a job interview, all that, their attendance data will be basically given to the employer and say, well, I'm sorry, at school, you were not a good attender. Why would I employ somebody who's not a good attender at school, who was more likely to do these things? We have to be, if anything, weirdly, probably stricter in this generation to the world that they are living in, not the opposite. We are not doing them any favors if we continually gratify and say, do you really need the toilet? Yeah, well, I really need the toilet because I drank 16 liters of water and I played football and I didn't bother going to the toilet. So I let that child go to the toilet, as is their right, fair enough, it's a bodily function. But they haven't managed their own time effectively. So if they can't manage their time now, what are we teaching them? Don't manage your time. Remember, the function of school is to get our children prepared for the world, not to just basically make them think in that world, you get what you want if you just kick off enough. That's not a message that we want to be sending our children. So we have to be sometimes respected, that our judgment is respected. And yet, if we get it wrong, we get it wrong. This culture of you make one snap decision, you get it wrong, and that's it, you're done. We have to be able to, like everybody else, make a mistake and say, I made that judgment call at that time. That's why I made that judgment call. I got it wrong. And apologize to that child if you get it wrong. But that's the problem now. We're living in such a fear culture that one snap decision made can absolutely ruin you. And then they wonder why there's a recruitment and retention crisis in teaching, because we're sick of being micromanaged, and every single decision we make has to be justified. We're an organic being in an organic situation, and we're humans too. So this constant bashing us because I dare not let your child go to the toilet. Do you know what? Get over it. Just get over it and get over yourself I'm a judgment call I make. I'm a professional doing a job. And if you don't like me doing that job, then get your ass in the class if you think you can do it any better. Because I'm bloody flipping tired of these people about shoes, about uniform, about everything else. If they put all their energy into actually the education system we should have, the funding, where were they when academization happened? Where were they when Ofsted was destroying teachers? Where the hell are they on the actual reality of the things that we need the most in school? No, they're picking battles with toilets and shoes and ties and uniform. I wish they'd put their energy into the actual education system itself and direct their anger upwards, not down. The punching down society is just what it is. We're vulnerable, we're weak, kids punch us, parents punch us. Stop it. Punch up, stop punching down. Punch up at the people making the institutions and not the teachers themselves. If we've got school policies, go to the head teacher, go to the board of governors. Stop criticizing us in the coalface doing the damn job, because it's getting harder and harder every day. We need parents to support us, to hold that line, not throw us under the bus. And that comment just really annoys me, because it's just indicative of absolute nonsense we have to put up with. No disrespect. I'm sorry, I'm still going to say no to a child. If you don't like that, get somebody else in to replace me. Oh, that's right. There isn't people to replace me. So you know what? We're stuck with people like me. So tough. Deal with it.
Obviously, some people may say, well, that's why children aren't going to school, or young people aren't going to school, because now they feel traumatized, or they feel that their rights are being abused, or they feel as though school is a hostile place and they don't belong there. And all manner of other words that are used completely inappropriately in order to undermine the authority of the school. Schools are a microcosm of society, aren't they? And in society, there are collective responsibilities. And we've said this in various different ways. There are collective responsibilities, and we all have to recognize those. And in society, there are rules and social rules, and we follow those. It's not just about individual rights. It's a balance between those and the collective needs of the organization or the society or wherever it is that you happen to be at that time. And if you can't function as a member of a wider group, then you won't be able to function sensibly. You'll have to stay in your bedroom or your home and pretty much not interact with the rest of the world. And I don't think that's a future that most of us want for our young people. So there is a real and bigger and wider issue here, and it is to do with authority and regulation, and where we trust people and how we trust people. And unfortunately, we are, I think, to a degree, the victims of our own, and I don't mean personally our own, but as a society, our own propaganda, because we've taught people to question and to challenge all the time, and with good reason, because when power is corrupt and is used inappropriately, then bad things happen for sure. But nevertheless, if all you ever do is question, if all you ever do is challenge, if you never trust, if you never accept authority, then society and social cohesion falls apart. And that's what we are seeing. And it's not a society we want to live in. It's not a state of affairs we want to live in. So we do have to figure out a way through this.
I just wanted to talk to you again about Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit www.hachettelearning.com to explore the full range of titles. And just AQA, who are also our sponsors, they're the real experts. The teachers know that teachers are the real experts in the classroom. It's why they work closely with teachers like you, combining your insight with their assessment expertise to create tools, resources, training and guidance that genuinely make a difference. And as we head into exam season, AQA are focused on helping teachers feel supported and ready. Just head to their website, aqa.org.uk, to find out more. But yeah, Carl, brilliantly put, and I think that is correct. I think that we societally, and that's that change I was saying about with Ray's comment, that really since I left working in education in 2022, that real risk of the going viral thing has come in, because people have that platform that they never had before, that opportunity, and it takes one person to say something negative or critical, and then other people join in, and so and it's becoming in every single field of everything you do. I know it in as as a counsellor. I live that day to day, where people just feel they have a right to criticise anybody who's doing anything. And, you know, that could be from somebody who served them in a shop through to, you know, their child's teacher. And it's becoming an unfair society, because it's creating resentment. It's making people wonder, what is the point? Why do I bother? And I think I've really strongly got that from JP just then, that real sense of why am I even bothering to do this when all I get is grief for the decisions I make? Your decision to not let a child go to the toilet might be the decision that stops another child being shoved up against a wall and threatened, or, you know, physically attacked. Those decisions really count. And if you didn't make that decision and that happened, you would be accountable for letting that child go out to the toilet and attacking another child. You can't win.
No, so what you do is trust that individual to make the best judgment at the time. And it might sometimes be right, it might sometimes be wrong, because life is a bit messy that way.
Yeah.
But unless it is a serious case of deliberate and willful malpractice, then it really shouldn't be held to account in the way that it is. And I think that's where we've got the balance wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish sometimes that I could run to the papers with every minor parenting failure that the parents of my students demonstrate, just to be like, how does it feel to be persecuted for being a human being? How does it feel?
How would it work if there was an Ofsted for parents? So let's imagine.
I'm going to be honest with you. There are times I'd feel I'm not.
Exactly.
We all
Exactly. Every parent would. That's my point.
Exactly. But we learn
if you hold that level of accountability, then everybody is going to come up short ultimately, because you can't be right all of the time on the things that are inherently subjective. And I don't even know what right is anyway, a lot of the time. Sure, if there are willful and deliberate cases of dreadful parenting that lead to harm, that's a different matter. But the vast majority of the time, if you had Ofsted for parents, you know, and then at the end of the inspection, they printed a report and put it in your neighbour's house, you know, and printed it on the front door,
and then published it in the local newspaper as well.
Yeah, published it in the local newspaper,
and then said,
banner outside.
You're outstanding.
Exactly.
You require improvement.
You need improvement in these areas, and of course nobody be a parent, would they?
But the thing is, you see, this leads to a wider point. This is something that I truly believe, that we have lost the art of parenting through society. We move away from our own parents now because of work, because of better opportunities elsewhere. So we're not connected in the same way. We don't have the communities and the societies in the same way that we used to. We have groups that some parents feel that they may be able to join, other parents don't feel, you know, National Childbirth Trust and things like that. You know, a lot of parents wouldn't touch that with a barge pole because they would feel judged. They would feel as though they were being watched and observed, and so you have all of these problems, and so it's not a deliberate issue. It's not, people aren't deliberately bad parents. It's just that those examples have gone from our lives. You know, that learning that you get from the parents around you, your own parents, you know, we are becoming disconnected from those, and there needs to be a greater input. I have said this time and time again, that from very early years, if I was in charge of the world, then I would probably be putting a lot of money into health visitor system, and instead of parents just being able to drop off as and when they feel, which I did with my third child. I mean, I just thought, oh gosh, I can see she's putting on weight, I'm not going to bother anymore. But if we had a more opportunity for help from early identification, that there is a problem here, that this child, you know, because we're individuals, you see. So I have 3 children, and each one of them was completely different and needed different skills from me. We can't always find those skills as parents. I would go to bed and think, good God, I handled that so badly. I just don't know what I'm doing. But we don't have anyone to turn to in the same way that we used to as society. And so I think that that needs to be looked at, because we can recover this situation. And I think that parents, it's not necessarily that they know they're bad parents. It's like all of these things, it creeps in. And by the time you've got a 13 or 14-year-old who you never said no no to you. My daughter often says, there's a kid who never heard the word no, but she does, because she heard it all the time. But if you don't, if you're the people around you are saying you should always, it's child-centered, you've got to do anything your child wants, you can understand why parents find themselves in a situation with children who are taller than them, bigger than them, and angrier than them, who they can't handle anymore, and that's a huge problem.
I think that the thing is that nobody likes to be criticized, and people need to reflect. When you're saying, for instance, the whole, when I'm saying your child is lying, I am not making a personal slight at the parent. Let me be clear. When I'm saying your child is lying about going to the toilet, I'm just saying kids are kids. And sometimes actually brilliant parents produce absolute complete nightmare kids. It's not on the, there are times a parent sits down and parenting and I go, no, you have whatever you've done, and you can have that with siblings. It's the most amazing thing when you see one sibling is the best behaved kid and some other, or nature or nurture. It's an absolute nightmare. And the parents going, what did we do wrong? And they go, you've done nothing wrong. It's just kids. And that's the problem, is people take it personally. They take it, I'm personally criticizing their parenting upbringing. We do that to our own parents. It's a sign of maturity when you look at your own parents now and go, it was the 1970s and 80s, capital punishment was there. And I judged my parents as terrible parents for some of the horrible things that they put me through. The 80s, let's be clear, was a darkened time for parenting, and even schooling. I was keen. There are lots of things but context is also important. At the time, my parents did the best job they could possible. And a lot of parents are doing the best job they can. And I think that relationship needs repaired, because it's very easy for parents to then blame teachers, and then teachers to go, well, it's the quality of parenting. Somewhere in the middle is the sweet spot where we should allow parents, they do make mistakes. They are human beings, as Ray was saying. And we teachers are human beings. We make mistakes. But it's the forgiveness of it. You've made a mistake. You made a judgment call. If I was in a situation where one of my teachers, who I know quite well, teaches my children, made a mistake, as a parent, I would be angry, of course, but then I'd understand them as a human being, and it's about their response. If they turn around and say, look, I've genuinely missed the point, I've made a mistake, I'm really sorry, I got it wrong with your child. What am I, A, going to do? Go after that teacher, or B, go, you know what, you've made a mistake, you've owned it, and you've taken responsibility for it, and that's good. That's what we look for. It's this culture of blame, or whose ownership of it, and the same goes for the kids as well. We make mistakes. To err is to be human. And that's what's part of this. And that's not what we're hearing in the conversation. This polarization of who's right and who's wrong, but basically makes a big adversarial. I think one of the texters said that, about the adversarial nature of things. I want to work with parents for the betterment of their children. And I want parents to work with me, because we both have the same thing in common. And I don't think they see it that way sometimes. I think we're just paid to do a job, and we're not doing the job they want us to do. Well, sometimes the job they want us to do is not the job that I think I should be doing. And therein lies the difference between judging me as a teacher and saying the things that I do is not what they want me to do. Well, I'm really sorry about that, but that's not the job. I'm the professional. I'm the academic professional. Be the university, flipping around, know what I'm doing, and I know why I'm doing it. But instead of having that conversation with me, they go straight to the press, they go straight to social media, they go on spotted pages, and before you know it, they think the best way to build a relationship with me is to criticize in public or go to Ofsted. I'd say to any parent out there, you want to go down that route, you're not going to build a positive relationship, because you're more likely with me to say, I'm not working with you. Why would I want to work with a person like that? Why would I want to work with people like that? And if some schools have those relationships with some of the parents, these schools need to work hard to build a better relationship, because then in a good classroom, I don't have a problem with this with toilet, because I've built a good relationship with those children, because they know they can trust me. And I know that if those students ask to go to the toilet with me, that they're genuine. That works. That's hard to create that culture. But that culture comes from mutual respect. I respect young people. They respect me in return. I respect parents, but I damn well expect that respect to come back to me as well. That's about I think we're losing that. I think we are starting to lose that accountability, but that human accountability. You made a mistake. I made a mistake. Hold up. I hold my hand up. I'm really sorry. Same with the kids. I'm sick and tired now. It's not my fault. Their behavioral needs aren't met. I mean, stop making excuses. Just own it. Take some responsibility. I made a mistake. If your child's not potty trained at 5 years old, then what the hell are you doing? Sorry, don't blame that on anybody else. Potty train your child. My child can't read at 6 years old. Well, read him a bedtime story. My child needs to go to the toilet because they never taught them how to go to the toilet. Well, then teach your children the basics. Knife and blooming fork. Please and thank you. Go to the toilet at proper times. This is basic human stuff, if you ask me.
Anyway. Lucy, I think, has made a good point earlier about how children's services, particularly with early years and very young children, I think that and the withdrawal of that has been a seriously retrograde step for society. You know, in the early 2000s, it was far from perfect, and people were still having these debates to a degree, but there was nevertheless a much more well-developed system which supported families who, for various reasons, do struggle to bring up their children, and some parents do. A lot of single parent families have economic pressures and psychological and emotional demands pulling them in different directions, and they need the help and support of people who are able to take a step back and give them the benefit of their advice and experience and maybe sometimes resources. All that was withdrawn.
But
And
there's
all of
only
it,
one pot of money. The problem is there's only one pot of money. So I have spoken to people who worked, underpinned those services, who have said that when we looked at it, the people we needed to attend those services were not coming. I took my daughter to a Sure Start centre and was told, thank you so much for coming, but it's probably not for someone like you.
Sure.
Because I was going to other groups and I was just taking,
Yeah.
I just went to everything. And the problem is they said that we needed to look at the pot of funding we had and try and work out better ways to use that to direct it at the people who really needed the help. So this is the problem. It's just money in general. There's no cruelty choice here about, gosh, let's ruin the lives of children going forward. It's about looking at the money you've got and trying to work out, are we spending it the best way? They built a beautiful big building in the back of my kids' school, primary school, lovely, you know, timber framed hut that nobody was ever in. When I went there was no one else there and I was still sent away. Do you get what I mean? And so those are the issues.
Yeah, sure. No, you make a very good point. And don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that these things are simple or straightforward. But what I am suggesting is that because of the nature of the society we now live in, where people can separate, people can have children without being married, all of which was less common, you know, in say previous societies, or you know, over 100 years ago now, but a long time ago. Because of that, we find that a lot of parents are in more vulnerable situations, and that's a reality for them, and they do need help and support, and that help and support will pay back, because when you give it to people who are, you know, struggling and they've got a 1-year-old or several children under 5 and they can't, or they're struggling to teach them, you know, some basic things, then the means of, you know, simply being in touch with somebody once a week who is able to say, well, look, this is how we do it, or that's how we can do it, and give them that guiding hand and that support can be the difference between that child growing up when they're 13 or 14 to be, you know, quite dysregulated and dysfunctional, and that child growing up to be somebody who can realize their potential and be a positive member of society. And withdrawing all support for that, I think, was a profound mistake. I don't want to make it, it's nothing about government or politics in that sense, but I think we need to recognize that support, when it's done well, is a necessary part of our society in the way it's currently constructed.
But at the same time, I've been to impoverished countries who have a lack of resources, but their children taught please and thank you and manners and respect. And I get very tired. I mean, I grew up in poverty. I grew up in a very economically rundown, the most economically rundown area of the United Kingdom in the 1980s. Unemployment 45%. My mum's a housewife, my dad's a plasterer. I don't accept this nonsense, because some of the best mannered children, some of the best respectful children come from some of the most impoverished households. Some of the most disrespectful children, the most entitled children have come from households where their parents are high professionals.
Absolutely.
Think that the world revolves around them and the universe.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you, JP. I'm not saying that. I agree with that. It's not just a simple relationship between poverty, deprivation, and an inability to do certain things. It can be all sorts of reasons why these things happen. But the fact that they do happen, and that we either accept the consequences of no support being there, which is what we're living now, or we do something about it, which is to put that, you know, support in. It's about, or you know, as with most things, about balance, isn't it?
I mean, your point is correct. I mean, the Sure Start Centre statistics showed that parents who took their children to Sure Start Centre, when they went through the education system and they got out at 16, they compared, didn't they, those that went to Sure Start Centre, the outcomes at GCSEs versus those that didn't. There's half a level difference, wasn't there? So it does work, and I do think, yes, we need more, but we also need more basketball courts, football courts. Churches used to be more active, the community centres, the whole community. I think you hit upon it, Lucy, about the whole community, whole community, and how the community used to be within the school. And that, when I go back to my own childhood, if one of the parents rang up, one of the teachers rang up and said, your son did this at school, the first default response is, what's he done and what do we need to do to fix it? The default response wasn't, what have you done wrong? Because my child is perfect and the teacher is the one that's wrong. And I do think the media and the government have had something to play with that, because they have vilified us, they've thrown us under the bus, they've defunded us, they have unprofessionalized us, they've hollowed out our profession. They've done this by successive waves of criticisms. They have disrespected us, and as a result, if we're disrespected by the people in charge, then why would the parents respect us when the people who are our bosses have disrespected? Academy Trust CEOs have disrespected teachers, and that filters down. So the punching down of us has basically, and that's the difference with some societies where teachers are still elevated to a position of, your child asked to go to the toilet in class. What did the teacher say? No. End of conversation. That's the end of that conversation. It doesn't go any further than that. Well, the teacher is the arbiter and the authority in that class. And yes, we have seen authority can be, and Carl, your point is very salient as well. Authority is I don't mind parents questioning me. In fact, I encourage people to question me. I'm a questioning person myself. I don't like authority myself, ironically, but I don't mind authority if authority is fair, balanced, and has made a judgment based upon some evidence. And that authority is accountable. But equally, at the same time, if people get it wrong, we just have to have people hold their hand up and go, that's okay, we've got it wrong. And that goes for us, it goes for parents, it goes for the government. But you look at leadership in the country, it's not their fault. The economic winds, Liz Truss, Boris, 1914 parties, we just are badly led from top to bottom. And yet I think we're one of the few institutions that are still trying to hold the line. And as a result of that, it's getting harder for us to hold the line when the prevailing culture of our society is everybody gets what they want. I mean, you don't get what you want, here's how to get what you want. And then we'll all just convince each other in a little social networking group, this is how we do it, this is how we get what we want. Well, what about compromise? It's a dirty word these days, isn't it? What about compromise? What about finding systems where kids can go to the toilet, where staff can still do their job? And that's, again, the sweet spot, the porridge spot. We need to find a system that works where kids can go to the toilet, where staff members can be protected in a way if they make a wrong judgment call, they make that wrong judgment, they're not thrown under the bus. I think that's what we're really saying, is we need a kind of overhaul. And looking at all the stuff the government's talking about, it's moving more towards the pandering end than it is towards our end, in a sense that I don't see that they're going to strengthen the role of teachers in the classroom. If anything, because of voters being who they are, they're more likely to go the other way and make us even more accountable. And that worries me more, because this situation won't be resolved. It will just be more of us will resign and walk out the door because we just don't feel supported.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that is a very good summary of the feelings of lots of people in education. I think we're getting towards the end, everybody.
Yeah, I do. I just wanted to thank people for all their comments quickly. We didn't have a chance to read them all out because we had so much to say ourselves, but there have been some really, really interesting and helpful comments. There have been some that have supercharged the conversation. Many people who've agreed with us. Somebody said in their job they don't work in education, but they get monitored for their all of their toilet breaks in their job. That backs up what we were saying. So yeah, I think it's been a really good conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, I love the comment. If I can just add one comment that JBL has put on there, just to finish with, if I may. There are teachers in every school in the nation who have forgotten more about education than any Secretary of State will ever know, but they don't listen to teachers. I agree with that. Okay. All right, then. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you all. Bye.
Outstanding, a world-class vision, world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and